but this leaves Annie open, and she's been a very powerful first pick on blue side.
Well, and that's what I was kind of wondering. Like, you know, is this a trade? Are they saying, okay, we're going to do, you know, trade OP for OP or something like that? But it's very surprising to see that Annie left up. It has been super effective across a lot of games, and I also would rather Chovy be on a high power pick like that than something that is facilitating like the Lissandra.
I mean, this does mean that Yagao's Ahri is up for grabs, right? The Vi Ahri goes left uncontested. Gen.G, though, they're no strangers to the Wukong themselves, something that Peanut has played a lot at already this tournament, and very proficient on the champion. So Gen.G and BLG looking to have strong mid-jungles, and the Aphelios. So contrast the game one, where BLG prioritized getting themselves a lot of comfort picks. Game two, it's a lot more meta, and already you start to favor Gen.G's approach when it really feels like that the LCK was the defining factor when it came to establishing what are the strongest meta picks of this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think Gen.G is going back towards a lot of comfort here, though. You know, this is by far the most played champion this split, this entire season for Peanut. 22 Wukong games. He was almost a Wukong one-trick for a while there, it felt like, in the LCK. And it has been such a powerful team fighter. We have seen Wukong's really dominating games, being able to solo out enemy AD carries. Kanavi has been incredible on it, but a lot of different guys. So I do wonder, what kind of support are we going to go with here? Because I don't think if you don't have any sort of support to really peel that Wukong off, it can be so problematic for the Jinx, even if it is just that solo dive with the Wukong getting past, it's really going to be difficult for Elk to make stuff happen.
And with both teams having those mirrored roles drafted so far, with your marksmen, your junglers, your mid laners, it's supports and top lanes here in the second half of the draft that are going to be targeted. And the big thing I'm looking at here is with BLG over on red side this time around, Bin, that ferocious laning monster that you were talking about in game number one, Isaac, does have the opportunity to go for last pick of the draft, final counter pick, and Gen.G, respecting that, take away that trademark Jax.
Yeah, I mean, taking away the Jax, I do think Gragas often considered to be a good matchup in the Jax, but it just wasn't last game. Bin just played so damn well, created a big advantage, and was impactful in the team fights, which was not really what I was expecting. I did expect him to do well in the 1v1, but it's been really hard for Jaxes to transition that lead and take it into a 5v5 where they can be effective. So Thresh being banned out, Lulu being banned out, a couple of the pairings for that Aphelios. Obviously, they want this Aphelios vulnerable because you've drafted Vi and Ahri. You want to be able to get into that backline and really destroy these guys. I'm curious where we're going to see on go. Is he going to be drafting towards engage? Is it going to be something like the Braum that's more defensive? Are we going to see something like I have been wanting, such as Renata, which I think is really strong into a lot of these picks, but has not been popular whatsoever?
I wonder if BLG will go for Braum. There is a lot of risk with just taking a Braum blind, of course, but when we think about a lot of the meta supports, are they looking for more dive? The Leona was something that we saw from early on in the tournament, and the follow-up alongside the Vi is very prevalent. I don't love the Blitzcrank.
I think it should be Braum. I think if you go Leona, then Delight can just Braum, and then you're in a pretty bad 2v2. And I think Braum has more value in the 5v5. So I think, if you're not going to go for hard engage, if you feel like you've already got enough here, then Braum makes a lot of sense as a stable pick. It's one of those champions that can help to deny the follow-up. Tahm Kench would make a lot of sense as an answer here to the Vi and the Ahri, trying to keep Peyz safe.
Yeah, I think BLG recognized we would have no peel for our Jinx if we decided to go for Leona, and they've got a Wukong Annie, so definitely makes a lot of sense. Gen.G now need to find a solid, safe, blind top to go into Bin.
Now, my concern is, in a lot of situations, I think they would just go towards like a Scion or something here, but Gwen is not banned, and I think that's really problematic. So we could look towards like a Gnar if they want something.
Jace is up.
Jace is possible as well, but I just would be so scared to do carry versus carry after that performance that we got from Doran against Bin. Bin will counterpick you. But this is the problem again, like you go towards a tank, that's kind of what I expected, but then not banning the Gwen, I think it's just really going to be problematic because you can transition that lead so well.
They ran out of bans, Azael. They just ran out.
You only get 5.
It's just so interesting, right? Because when I'm thinking about champion strength, I feel like I would way rather be playing against the Jax than I would be against the Gwen. But maybe they're just saying, well, it's not about the champion, it's about Bin. And that's the problem, right? And he's so good on the Jax that he's kind of demanding that attention. But I feel like the Gwen is a better matchup into the Ornn, and it's also a better team fighter.
They also picked Ornn into Braum. Like,
yikes.
It's one of those situations where when you think about what they're playing into, I think BLG are very happy. Admittedly, BLG's composition is very much about getting in front of your face, closing that gap. You have short range in the form of Gwen, who wants to have access to the backline. You also have a Vi and an Ahri that want to be able to die.
Drafts.
I personally like BLG's comp more. I think they actually have a really good pick. They have side lane, but they have a side lane team fighter that can bring it into that 5v5 and become really problematic for them. Gen.G do have a monstrously strong mid jungle, but I like what BLG have drafted.
Yeah, my only concern for BLG is that I think that their comp is harder to execute when you kind of think about the late game team fights. Because when you have Gen.G, you have just such a solid wall for Peyz to stand behind. There's so many easy ways for them to start a fight, because even if Doran's ultimate does get blocked, Peanut, as a champion, like we saw what Kanavi was able to do on the Wukong yesterday, and the follow, whether it be Chovy initiating, Peanut following, whether it's Peanut initiating and then Chovy following, this Annie Wukong duo is just monstrous. So I very much agree that BLG have a lot of agency in terms of their early game playmaking, but I do get concerned that if they don't build leads, can they break through the wall that Gen.G's comp has built?
Yeah, and I mean, this is why this stuff is so interesting, right? Because it's all about, you know, where you see these different champion levels and where you expect the leads to be built. You know, when I'm thinking about it, I'm expecting Bin to have an advantage, and then Gwen can become so problematic. It's one of these champions that can solo threaten backline. You know, and even if Peyz is kept safe by a Devour, if Peyz isn't free hitting, and on the other side Elk is, then things really become problematic. So it's going to be so much down to where can you create these leads, where can you build advantages, and then how well can you execute on those advantages come 5v5.
And I want to talk about Elk a little bit here as we're starting things off and the minions are colliding, because at the beginning of the previous game, we were talking about how this is the guy that BLG want to invest in. This is the hyper carry. This is where the resources go, and that's why it meant so much that he got ahead early. And even later on in the game, we got to see him have one of those Jackie Love style moments where he flashes into the whole enemy team and drops his ulti, but he was prepared. He had the stopwatch that he just had bought immediately before, and it was just a bait. It sets it up. They're able to run him down. They immediately end the game. It feels like Elk is exactly where he needs to be mentally, recognizing his limits and pushing them just the right amount to make a highlight reel for his team instead of for Gen.G.
He's a player that over time has steadily worked his way up the ranks, and obviously BLG, in terms of confidence coming into this tournament, many expected EDG to be the second seed representative or to be fighting alongside JDG. For BLG to kind of come out of nowhere, make the run that they did, like, a lot of credit goes to multiple members on this team, but to see his growth and to see him performing on the international stage is definitely a sight to see. It's frustrating for the rest of the world that the LPL keep producing world-class AD carries, but for the LPL, their AD carries...
You already have enough.
Yeah.
You really need another?
Exactly. They're for sure a treat to watch.
And I mean, for BLG, you're talking about nobody expected him to be there. Yeah, this was a team that was 5th place in the regular season, a team that has only ever made playoffs in 6 out of 12 of the splits since they joined the LPL in 2018. This is not one of those orgs that is consistently always at the top all the time, but this roster, you just feel like they have that explosive power that can really set them off if they're all on the same page and they're all executing at their top level.
And what I think is interesting, when we saw the initial group draw, people were like, oh, I hope I get BLG, you know? And then moving into the next stage, oh, I think BLG is beatable, you know? And then moving into this stage, expectations are, oh, BLG shouldn't be able to stand a chance. BLG's bot lane under attack.
Gen.G going in. Delight has led the way as Ornn and Elk have to fall back. Peyz still with full HP. Looking for a little bit more damage here from downtown with the Calibrum. Nice stun back onto Elk as he and Ornn are forced back. We get done singing the praises of BLG, but we got to remember who they're staring down across the rift, because Gen.G is a ferocious squad to have to fight. Shun coming in here looking for the dive onto Chovy. The charm flies out, but it missed. They get the damage anyway. The max range instant 1-2 proc on the Q as Ornn has to try to get away from the tier 1 here in the bottom lane. Peanut looking to set up a dive, but Elk and Ornn are already both out of danger. It's a 1-0 game for BLG.
Yeah, they get the kill, but it's the inverse of last game where all of these minions are being denied. They're actually going to have to TP their mid laner down to catch this wave because it's too many minions to lose. That would be about 2-3 full waves that Elk would lose, so BLG are not willing to have that happen. Bin trading well on that top side. But yeah, I mean, it was Delight that started it all up. Bin.
Oh, he flashed in! Bin puts him in the bin! Throws him away, doesn't even worry about it. That is the 1v1 top lane god.
Doran overstepped after losing a trade. He goes back in, and Bin, we talked about last game how he will not hesitate. Once again, he does not hesitate to cut Doran to pieces.
I mean, Doran was playing with fire there. When you see that the snip is fully stacked up and you are that low health, you cannot be in range of that guy. Bin goes for the Q flash, fully stacked on the Q. and just cuts him down. And he goes back to base with not only the solo kill, but double the CS that Doran had on his buy. You look at the buys, it's a Ruby Crystal versus a full Leeching Leer. That's a 1,300 gold buy versus a 400 gold buy in a losing lane that you already got solo killed in. So it's not about to get better.
And you think about the state of the map right now, Gen.G found a great 2v2 trade in the bot lane, which they then converted into a dive, and they zoned so much farm away from Elk. You can see in terms of the CS, he's been able to claw that back, and in terms of actual gold, that's been neutralized. They are even between the two AD carries. Meanwhile, Yagao finds himself with a 300 gold lead. The top lane finds himself with a 400 gold lead. BLG's solo laners off the back of an early gank from Jun has benefited BLG massively in the early game.
Peanut already using the clone here to disengage from Yagao's charm. So Shun's able to further pressure into this enemy jungle, try to steal away this Raptor camp. You can see the small Raptors already being mopped up by Peanut. He's not willing to contest for the large one, but you can still get a good chunk of the camp just by taking all the small ones instead. Shun now needs to be mindful of Delight making the rotation up as Chovy drops the ulti here on Yagao. That bear is so obnoxious. Tibbers does so much damage if it sticks around. Meanwhile, 3v3 now here in the river. Peanut jumping in, looking to go after these guys. On trying to disengage. Shun and Yagao need to do the same. On is gonna drop. And it's Chovy getting the first kill of the game for Gen.G.
Credit to Delight. He has been playing so aggressively on this Tahm Kench, setting up a lot for them on that bottom side. You know, gets the initial engagement, sets up that big trade on Elk, puts him down a little bit. Then making that roam up here, finds the play, slowing them down enough that they can chase down, get the kill, and now take the dragon as well.
Props to Gen.G. I feel like after game one, they weren't quite expecting the level of aggression that BLG showed, but game two, they're matching it now. They know the dragon's up. They want to fight BLG over it. Chovy drops his whole combo onto Yagao, meaning that they can create a health advantage, and it forces BLG to split apart right from the get-go. And as you said, Azael, it's really Delight setting up that play initially. He found a great play in the bot lane 2 versus 2. He finds another here in the river, and Gen.G convert this into their first Drake of the game.
Yep, goes for the aggressive dive into the river, finds that flash Q at the end as well to slow down Braum one more time. Really nicely done. And it does give a kill over to Chovy. And you were talking about it earlier before that. We were so rudely interrupted by that play. Annie, you know, just kind of drops Tibbers on cooldown in lane, right? And that is kind of how you just play out this lane, is that you can always get a really effective trade and then just utilize the Tibbers both to push out the wave and to harass your opponent. It's also really effective with first strike because you can get so much burst damage out that you kind of just end up farming gold with it.
Yeah, what's interesting for Chovy is that even though he did die earlier, thanks to the kill that he got back, he was even ahead of CS in the matchup against Yagao, and he finds himself with about 100 to 200 gold lead. So he's already getting decent advantages off the back of this first strike, 100 gold benefiting from the rune. So Gen.G, again, kind of matching this early aggression. The goal difference right now largely exists because of Bin and Jun finding those early kills.
Yeah, and because you have that massive top gap, you're not really going to be able to contest here at the Herald. So it's just going to be a freebie for BLG up on this top side. Gen.G will not even look to match. You can see that BLG did walk their bot lane up, but they're going to get back towards bot to catch everything except maybe they'll lose 1 or 2 minions. Maybe 1 melee minion, I think, is all they lost. So really well timed on the roam. They will lose a plate to Peyz, who does have that white gun out to be able to kind of chunk through this pretty quickly. But still, well worth the move from BLG.
And one of the biggest differences this game is the status of Peyz. I talked in game number 1 about how Gen.G loses games, and it generally requires Peyz to be set behind just because of how important this guy is to that Gen.G war machine. This time around, he's feeling great. He's up 11 CS. He's the one who's already taken off 2.5 plates from the turret in his lane. And on a champion like Aphelios, we know he'll be able to carry fights.
Well, and that's why I thought that dive was so problematic in the last game. To me, that kind of really was the turning point that put Elk into the lead, and he never let hold of that lead. This time around, Gen.G made sure that they were going to put pressure down on that bot side, that they were going to focus on keeping Peyz safe and getting him ahead. They have accomplished that, though it is a very slight lead, so we'll see if he's going to be able to make good on it.
Looking for a play top.
All right. Bin could be in some trouble here, trying to fight it off in a 1v2, but so much burst from Peanut and from Doran. I don't know what the flash was for.
Terrible flash.
Bin just ends up wasting the summoner spell, still gives away the death, and it's Gen.G feeling good topside.
Yeah, nicely done. Peanut just coming up with the lane gank. Again, Tibbers off cooldown. Tibbers dropped on Yagao, chunked down about 30-40% HP, and he's going to have to go back to base. So that is that frustration of dealing with Annie, and this is why we so frequently see it banned on the red side. It is really difficult to deal with, but I was expecting if Bin's going to flash at all, you need to try to flash the Ornn ulti. If he actually dodges the Ornn ulti there, he could potentially use the needles to actually just slow down Peanut and try to kite back. try to survive that way, but as soon as you get hit by all the CC, using the flash at 5% HP is definitely not it.
Yagao trying to charm Tibbers underneath the turret to do a little bit more damage to it, get it off.
It is worth quite a bit of gold, actually, if you kill it.
Yeah,
so it's worth trying.
Just super annoying, so it's definitely worth killing. You'll notice here from Doran, he's going to throw out the Q into E to try and get that initial knockup, but also helps him close the gap to guarantee that the Ornn ultimate connects. Then the Peanut just holds onto his ult, uses the W to then close the gap and throw out the ultimate again, gets a quick kill. And it's a much needed kill as well, because really the gold disparities are being built from Xun and Bin. It's these two where they're finding bit of advantages. You can see it in the farm, you can see it in the early kills. So Peanut being able to alleviate some of that pressure definitely helps Gen.G as they transition from this early game to mid.
Absolutely. And Doran did see Xun walking into the brush, so now it's just time to see if he can win Best Actor and waste a little bit of time, pretend that he doesn't know that he's there, stay close enough to keep him interested, but not so close that you could die. You have to say, though, the timing on the gank was really, really good. You know, Bin used the skip and slash forward, and as soon as he uses that, they immediately go. You know, you called it out, but Doran actually using that E to stay inside that immunity zone so we can make sure that the Ornn ulti does connect. Like, it was pretty much perfectly played from the Gen.G side and really well timed. So credit to them. Bin was definitely feeling safe in that 1v1 with the gold lead he had.
And now we've got Gen.G looking for a play here underneath the bottom lane tier 1 turret. Peanut and Chovy both showing up. Chovy does have that Tibbers available, ready yet again, but they are not going to overcommit to this dive. Peyz looking to potentially just grab the last bit of this third plate. The Infernum makes it very easy to shove up that wave, melts it before his minions even take any damage from theirs. There it is, 3 plates for Peyz.
So the beauty of that play was that they didn't even have a stacked wave. It was just that because they saw Xun top, they said, hey Chovy, come with me. And so Peanut and Chovy just showed themselves. And they didn't need the proper setup because they know that they had a numbers advantage given that Xun was on the top side of the map. Now that they have this presence, now they have this push, they've rotated over to the Dragon. Yagao has pushed in mid. But BLG actually conceding this objective. A little uncharacteristic for BLG, but they are going to say, you know what, it's fine, we'll give this one up. We don't feel strong enough to fight right now, especially with the gold disparity that exists between the 280 carries.
Yeah, it's a nice play from Gen.G. It's also a nice response. I actually liked how Elk backed off from the tower, On stayed under the tower, so he's actually soaking XP and still getting some of that gold. If you try to dive the Braum, the Jinx is close enough to assist, but the Jinx is not close enough that he can actually be engaged upon. So really well played. And, oh, the Herald's actually aggroing Tibbers and chasing. I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
that was wonky.
Interesting.
Shelly just full chased that thing, almost actually died before charging. That would have been really problematic.
That would have been a very clean interaction if it did succeed all the way. And even if it doesn't work out, I mean, obviously the Herald still got the charge.
Yeah.
You're still chunking down your opponent the exact same way that you were talking about. Chovy's been wanting to do the entire lane. That was a full HP Ahri for Yagao, knocked down to about 1/3 from just the Tibbers and follow-up basic spells combo. The Annie is so difficult to deal with. Again, just surprised that it made it through the bans.
Yeah, I mean, it's 250 gold earned from first strike, right? You know, it's almost a kill just from kind of farming gold. Every time Tibbers is up, you walk forward, you drop it, you proc the first strike, you use your full combo. And it's very, very easy to kind of farm gold in that way. Plus, obviously, it does scale very well because it's percentage damage. It's not just a static amount that is going to proc. Right. It's just amping everything that you're doing. So if you get that big engage later on, you're always going to have that flat percentage burst added on top of it. Oh, this is actually pretty tough for Doran now, though. He's going to have to be really, really careful about how he actually plays up this matchup because he is up against the Riftmaker now. He has the Radiant Virtue, so he did go for much more of the kind of like team-focused Mythic. You know, he's not really looking to scrap at all. So this means you basically just cannot interact with the Gwen whatsoever. You only just take the farm as it comes to your tower. There's no more fighting in the 1v1. With the dagger picked up, Bin's actually going for the more split push heavy build. He's going to be going towards Nashers. It's not going to be a Cosmic Drive. It's not going to be an early Zonias or something along those lines.
It's my favorite matchups, the Cower and Fear ones.
Yeah.
Ones where you are perpetually into your tower and you go, best of luck team, I'll see you later.
See you in 30 minutes.
Yep. Doran, obviously not the strongest performance in game 1. Was solo killed earlier, but can still have a huge impact in the fights. Yagao ults over.
BLG looking for their moment here in the mid lane, but they won't find a damn thing. Peanut's ready for the follow-up, throws Yagao up into the air. A lot of bursts coming down from Gen.G. Doran's got the kill on, and Xun barely survives. Doran's taken low. Bin jumps into the middle of everybody, but now he's got to retreat because Gen.G's able to turn around, and Delight finds the kill. Yagao and Xun trying to hobble away, and Gen.G get 2 for 0.
BLG tried to pull together some haphazard engage, and Gen.G just tore it apart. Yagao couldn't connect the charm. On couldn't connect the ultimate. And we talked about Doran's impact in these fights. While his Ornn was very present. The two-man knockup, the engage from afar, Gen.G win out on the fight.
Yeah, it was really kind of haphazard. It was not very organized there from BLG. You know, they're sending that Ahri out with the ulti very early, trying to find a pick here. Yagao trying to set it up, but you always want to lead with the Vi, and that's the whole point of this combo, is that the Vi guarantees that everything lands from the Ahri. You go in with the Vi ult first, then the charm is guaranteed, then the Everfrost is layered after that, and that is really the core of that duo. But when you send it here and you miss everything, it's going to be incredibly difficult. Bin got some really good ulti procs here off, was shredding through a lot of people, forcing out the stopwatch even from Chovy, but there's just no follow-up damage left.
I will say, had Chovy not stopwatched that, it may have given out the passive proc, and then that could have been a very different fight. But huge props to Chovy as well. He landed a massive stun in the middle of that, which really set up Doran to then get the follow-up CC. So much damage and stacking crowd control available on Gen.G's side. And this is what we were talking about when we came into the game, about these drafts. BLG, while they do have a lot of agency, if they can't find that initial pick, you can see how in terms of the front to the back, it's a lot harder for them to just execute. Because the moment that the Wukong comes in with the amount of chaos that he provides, with the Annie ultimate providing so much CC as well, it becomes a lot harder to actually catch Peyz out, which means that BLG can really struggle if the fight goes on for too long.
I mean, it's interesting because we kind of got glimpses of both sides, right? You know,
that's true.
To see how Bin was really able to wreak havoc in that backline, even just on one item. He got a lot of people very, very low, and if that engage is nailed, and all of a sudden Peyz is a lot lower, well, the fight can look very different.
Or if he's even in the fight earlier,
exactly.
Right? Because he came into the fight quite late.
Yep.
So as we mentioned, it was a bit of a haphazard engage from BLG. If they can clean that up, this could very well be a different fight.
Well, we've got a pretty close game state now. The gold nearly tied, dead even, and it is 20 seconds until the next Drake spawns. Remember, the first two have gone the way of Gen.G. If they get this third one, it'll put them on soul point, which could be a serious problem for BLG going forwards. Peyz sidestepping away there. Delight getting to him there with the Abyssal dive just to make sure, in case they tried to make a move, he was there with the Devour to get his AD carry away to safety. But it looks like it's BLG with control over this bot side river, control over the Drake pit, and the opportunity to stop this stack. But Gen.G's not just gonna let him do it. They're teleporting in Doran. Here on the Ornn, they've got the Herald summoned up mid. They're gonna use that to just apply pressure in the mid lane instead. The Drake is secured by BLG, so now Gen.G, they didn't want to overcommit, just jump into a fight they weren't ready to take. Instead, they're gonna at least trade objectives, grab this tier 1 turret here with a Demolish proc from Doran, and see if they can get this Herald a second charge. BLG trying to stop it. Herald smoked before it can connect.
Yeah, nicely done there. And surprisingly enough, that's first tower, right? 17.5 minutes in, so it's more gold than you would normally get on those kind of trades. So Gen.G getting paid off that. But it's an important dragon for BLG to take away. You can't be giving over that third dragon this early on, especially Ocean Soul with a team that has a lot of frontline. It is so problematic. So Bin is on the flank potentially here. Shun is coming back over. Gen.G trying to force, could be overextending.
Yeah, BLG want to set up some sort of an angle here for Bin, but it's a little bit too risky. You can see Yagao still all the way down in that bot side river, trying to come up and complete the pincer attack as well, but just was not able to get there in time.
Yeah, Yagao did try. The vision was a little bit too awkward, and BLG didn't like the position, so they decided not to overcommit. But I will say, this game overall a lot slower than what we saw in game 1. It's significantly less fighting, and I think the Gen.G feel a lot more comfortable in that environment. Their real strength is about how they play the map, their lane assignments. Chovy wasn't prepared for this.
Chovy in some trouble as Shun initiates. There's the 1-2 punch of Vi and one of her lane mates. Line them up, knock them down. Ulti into the follow-up from the Gwen means that Bin and Shun can get that kill for free, and they'll take the tier 1 turret on top.
Yeah, really nicely done. They know that he doesn't have stopwatch because he actually spent it in that mid lane fight. So even though he has flash, there's no sense in using it. He was always going to go down. Getting the tower off that plate as well is great. Doran potentially could knock down a turret of his own here. Yagao's heading down, but not going to be there in time. So Gen.G will answer the towers. The gold very, very close in this one. You know, it's a much closer contest. It's really all going to come down to the execution. And given the pace of the game, it really does feel like it's just going to be about dragon fights. It's just going to be about setting up those objectives. That's why it does extra damage when you do it like that. It's a warm-up, you know?
Yeah, he's winding up.
Yeah.
I think it's also really just an important mental game, you know? You've got to be having fun when you're
mental
playing
advantage secured.
Yeah, and he made sure that that entire wave died to the tower before he destroyed it. So we kind of look at the map state in its entirety. Vision, overall, well, relatively even across both sides. There are a couple of deep wards here. You can see setting up for the Drake, which is still spawning from quite a ways away. Ideally, both teams are looking for these kind of outer towers. So if you are BLG, ideally you'd be looking to try and secure this bot tower, which means that you'd want to try and invest your vision towards the bot side and then look to secure it, and then the cross map on top. But right now, it just feels like that both teams are just catching waves, looking to farm, and perhaps they don't want to take that gamble. Instead, they're just going to wait for this next dragon in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the difficulties right now for Gen.G is that you have no one that can actually really answer in a 1v1 against Bin.
True.
So Bin is just going to be pushing out side waves, then collapsing to the team, and always trying to use that tempo, right? Because they have Chovy now answering in a side wave, so now they know they have an extra member around here. So BLG can step forward, try to clear out vision, try to push out mid, try to gain some small advantages there before Bin heads back out towards top.
Man, what a close series between these two so far. Well, not quite the series, but at least this second game here. 21 minutes in, there's still only about 1,000 gold apart. 2 Drakes to 1, 2 turrets to 1. BLG not having that same sort of dominance that we saw in the first game. Gen.G seems to be much more on top of things, much more in control after not letting things snowball away early on. And those second item completions that you see on your screen right there, the Zonias for Chovy, the Infinity Edge there for Peyz. These could be critical in the upcoming fight.
Locket also just purchased by Delight, so a lot of big completions now coming through. Elk is doing what is a very common build, where you go Kraken into Zeal, then you go IE, just to have that additional attack speed, but it does delay your second item power spike quite a lot, so Elk definitely a lot weaker than Peyz right now.
And you can see Elk just actually losing out on the trade against Peyz there in the 1v1 in mid, even though Elk was the one with his support nearby. Considering Peyz has the red-white combination, he knew it was just a 1v2. He wasn't afraid to get up there and scrap with these guys a little bit. Now you can see both teams sort of fighting for position and vision around this topside river, around this Baron pit. We are at the point of the game now where if you get a really one-sided fight in favor of either side, Baron could be the reward.
Yeah, and as we talked about earlier, it seems that both teams are just kind of setting up for the dragon.
Doran.
But, Ben!
Oh boy. Doran jumps out, finds the knock-up. Then just goes back over the wall, he's fine.
That got a TP response though. They were actually clearly very concerned that the collapse was coming through, so Yagao insta-TP'd as soon as they saw that engage coming through. They're saying Doran's not gonna be going by himself in that spot.
And now we have a follow-up TP as Chovy joins up with the rest of his squad here in the middle of the map. 4 seconds until that Drake spawns.
I'm also really interested to see how effective of an exhaust Ornn can get. Delight did take Ignite, which is obviously better for lane, but exhaust scales much better, you know, against someone like Peanut or Chovy. If you can actually get that exhaust out before he can drop Tibbers, it is massive. And likewise with Peanut, it's gonna be providing that relief for Elk in this team fight. You can see Yagao also just spellbooked over to exhaust. So they have double exhaust for this fight, which is actually a really big spike for this one team fight.
Chovy over the wall. Shun looking for Chovy. The Tibbers is dropped and it doesn't accomplish anything. That's a huge cooldown no longer available for Gen.G.
Wow, bit of a misstep there from Chovy. He thought that Jun was going to commit to that play. Yagao with the ultimate and positioning meant that it was very realistic, but he ended up getting baited. And his Tipper's now gone. Chovy will, of course, still be able to... Oh, the charm.
Nice little bit of damage coming out from BLG. Also remember, Yagao has Banshee's Veil and a stopwatch in inventory. So the Ahri has some get-out-of-jail-free cards. Tibbers now smote away by Shun. Make sure that they aren't going to be dealing with that extra ambient damage of the burn from the bear.
Gen.G have lost mid lane prio though, and they can't really just walk through them, so they're gonna lose their mid lane tier 1 for free, and they're still gonna have to answer, or BLG could go for a tier 2. So now BLG get to enter into the river. Braum can just hop over the wall if he's in trouble, so not really threatened here. BLG maneuvering this very, very well, should be able to grab Scuttle, which is also really nice to have the additional move speed around these fights.
And one more hit, there we go. Shun picks that one up. Now Gen.G, again, moving in as 5. Keep your eyes on the Ornn horn. Keep your eyes on the Braum to block it. Yagao coming around on the flank, but he's spotted out, marked by Peanut. The Drake at about 10,000 HP. Peanut used the smite to pop the Banshee's Veil on Yagao.
It's fine.
He has a second charge.
Yeah, it should be fine to be back up. I was very concerned initially there, but it's okay. Dragon gets to 4K.
They're going in. Chovy wants to lead the way. The Drake is down to 3,000 as Chovy goes into the zone, used to protect himself for a little bit, and Tibbers is dropped once more. Now it's taken out, but Yagao is down. Peyz grabs the kill, and Gen.G have already run the fight. Peanut's going to chase down Elk, and the Jinx has no way home. Delight jumps over the wall with the Abyssal Dive, and on to the next target. Gobble, gobble. There goes Ornn, and he's just more food for Peyz. Gen.G get 3, and they'll get themselves a soul point as well. I think Baron might be next.
Ruthless execution as Gen.G flash onto the face of BLG, and this Annie Wukong combo destroys once again. the damage that Chovy and Peanut were able to do in the fight on the back of all the CC. Peyz basically solo killing Yagao. Absolute domination from Gen.G in game 2.
And I'm not sure that BLG realized how quickly the anti-ulti was going to be up, because remember, it was used mid lane and whiffed mid lane, and here is a flash Timbers engage. The cooldown on this thing is just not fair. He already has it up. He's playing CDR boots. He has Leandry's, which is the CDR passive from the Mythic, and he has the Zonias, so it's even more CDR, so very short cooldown on that. They find the engage, and as soon as you see this Wukong getting in onto your Jinx, there's just no chance.
And props to Doran. I gave all the credit to Peyz, but it was Doran that completely isolated Yagao in the fight. He tried to flank over the wall, chain CC into chain CC, and then Peyz just executed him on the spot. Gen.G now with a very comfortable lead decided not to convert it into the Baron. They just took the fight, walked away. But a great fight and looking good for Gen.G in game 2.
A couple critical things though. Elk did not waste summoners in what was a very clearly losing fight, and now has his IE completed. So he is at a much stronger point of the game here. So BLG, despite the fact that they lost the fight, didn't really overcommit, so they're pretty well set up to try to go again.
The game still is pretty close. That Drake that was secured by BLG earlier does end up coming in clutch, keeping that soul away from Gen.G, at least for now. But BLG are getting to the point where one more big loss, one more big mistake could just signal effectively the end of the game. Gen.G over the wall. They got to be careful here as, ooh, just a big whiff there from Yagao's Ahri means that BLG won't find anything.
I guess they didn't want to overcommit to that play, even if the charm did connect. See a bit of trading back and forth in bot lane, but Peanut has his eyes on Elk.
Jumps in. Ornn decides to drop the Glacial Fissure, and now they're going to find some damage onto Peanut. They follow it up with Shun. They get the shutdown on the enemy jungler, and Ornn's backing away, trying to escape from Timbers. Peyz is behind. Winter's Bite is there, and Ben's coming around. Snip, snip. They force him to go gold, and they shut him down with Ben. The rockets are flying, and Gen.G's dying. Delight hits the floor next, and Doran barely gets away. BLG pull the trigger, and it strikes true. 3-0 for the LPL team.
BLG held on to their summoners in the previous losing fight, and as Peanut goes in for a chunk, Ornn sees the opportunity to turn. He used the clone for the engage, so he didn't have it to get out. He hits the Q, he hits the ulti. They know they can proc the Braum passive, so in goes Shun. They full commit to the fight. Both top laners TP in, and it's been on the side, stacks up the Q on a ward, and is able to find the angle here. And this is what I'm talking about. He had already used the clone for the engage. You have to respect the turn there, and it is beautiful from Ornn and Elk.
I said it in game 1, and I'll say it again. You dare BLG to fight, and they will play that game. The Braum passive CC onto Peyz was spectacular. He's forced to flash away to safety, but that just means that it's easy for Bin to execute him on the back line.
And it's just these little things, but it's beautiful for Bin. He TP's in full stacks on that pink ward. So his first EQ forces out the stopwatch. He still has the charge of the ulti right after to finish off Peyz. Immediately after that was just so well played by BLG. But on the other side, Gen.G now level 15 here for Doran, so he has his own Mythic upgraded there. It's a Mythic upgraded as well for Peyz. So there are signs of hope.
BLG, they showed this against G2, they showed this against JDG, that even when they're behind, they can fight their way out of any situation.
Yep.
And they saw what was a fantastic opportunity, which they have now snowballed into a commanding map state. Ornn needs to be careful, though.
Yeah, Ornn potentially in some trouble here. Shun over the wall. Gonna give him something to jump away to. Glacial Fissure thrown down by Ornn, the support. Now disengaging, now getting back to his team. Bin's found his way into the back. He's found Chovy. Yagao's here in the front. He's gone golden. Two separate fights. BLG continuing to push down here in the bottom side as Doran's taken very low, and Ornn now retreating again. Yagao's still at about 200. Doran's still about dead. Peanut has to run away and leave the clone back in the brush behind him. BLG win another fight, 1-0.
With Peyz on the other side of the fight, there's no one to contest Bin. He has his death cap completed after that mid TP. You see how easily he chops through Doran. One proc of his ulti forced Chovy into the Zonias, and then there's no damage. He heals to full off of Doran, just using him for some free HP. And BLG come to life. They're pushing down mid. They take the tier 2, and they're gonna retreat back to the Dragon.
You foreshadowed it at the start of the game, Azael, where if Bin can just find the right angle, if Bin gets strong enough, he can become this unstoppable threat that Gen.G don't really have an answer for. And that fight position was not a good one for BLG. No. They were very separated. Yagao and Elk were separated from their front line, and they didn't really have the support or good position to follow up. And Bin said, I don't care. I do not care. 1v2, 2v3, I have the damage, I have the tools to dismantle Gen.G, and that is how they won that fight. They won a tower, and they won a dragon.
Well, this is the thing. You know, when you get to this point on Gwen, it requires the entire enemy team to actually deal with you because they have to be able to stun you up, get you inside that shroud, and be able to burst you down, right? And Bin is at this point where he really knows the limits of his champion. We saw, you know, in the JDG versus T1 yesterday, when Zeus was actually able to pick it, the only way they're able to do it, it was the full 5-man collapse onto this Gwen. Everyone burst him down. The sustain becomes really impossible to deal with. The only healing debuff is an Ignite on Delight, which was not in position to be there. There was no damage coming out from Peyz. They have no answers for Bin if he's not focused by everyone.
Now, the pings have come through from BLG onto their own AD carry, which is flashes up in about 45 to 50 seconds. They don't want to do anything until that is back up, and naturally they're going to assume that Peyz's flash is up at the same time. So both teams going to be playing safe for the time being, pushing out these waves, getting a bit of vision, but these AD carry summoner spells are crucial before any further fights continue.
Chovy also has to be really careful though, because he's been getting targeted a few times in these side lanes and in some of these fights. His flash is desynced from that of the Ahri. Bin's is going to be up before Doran's as well. So those critical summoners are going to be available sooner for BLG. And they're just going to be looking to continue rinse and repeat, set up for these dragon fights, set up for these Baron fights, pressure through sides with Bin. As long as Bin sees that multiple members are elsewhere on the map, he's pretty comfortable, I think, in almost any 1v2 at this point. I would actually favor him in a 1v2 against Doran plus Peanut at this point in the game.
It's so tough to deal with this guy. Stopwatches on both Bin and Shun whenever these guys decide to go in. Everfrost, Void Staff, Banshee's Veil, all done on Yagao. There's just so much power here on the side of BLG. We got 1.5 minutes until Baron, 3 minutes until the Drake. Gen.G had so much control for so long, but then it was that mid-lane fight that got BLG Baron. It was after Gen.G had just won a pretty decided victory themselves, but you guys properly pointed out the saving of summoner spells, the fact that they recognized they could keep those resources and turn it around later. Now, Gen.G still has quite a few ways that they can slam a fight. When you look at Peyz, you see the Hex Drinker with the Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge, Gale Force, evolved Mythic thanks to Doran's Ornn. And Gen.G, 5 men top, they're going to force down the tier 1.
It's really going to be a battle of Peyz saying, try to kill me, you know? and Bin is going to be like, okay.
Like he's Don't try too hard, stop that. Get away from me.
He's not going to shy away from that contest. And we'll see if Peyz can stand his ground very close to level 16. That's going to make a big difference. But Bin, just as close to level 18. Absolute monster in the top lane.
I mean, Bin is more than the total gold lead for his team, right? You know, he is a good 4,000 gold ahead now of Doran. They're 3,000 gold up on Gen.G. So if Gen.G can have a fight without Bin involved in it, it's potentially going to look really good for them. But any fight where Bin has a good angle is going to be so problematic. And he has the gold here, I think, to finish Zhonya's, or at least very, very close.
And normally, when you're looking at a game state like that, you would say, oh, well, at least he's Ornn. At least he's always still guaranteed to be useful. But there's been a couple of these team fights where the Ornn horn kind of just flies through and doesn't do anything. Even if it does do something, Braum can block it.
Exactly.
There are answers for BLG to deal with that guaranteed utility of an Ornn pick that you would normally assume. So Gen.G, they got to execute.
Gold-wise, though, you know, you have 4 mythics upgraded for that Ornn, so the gold lead is really 0. It's basically a dead even game at this point. You know, Soul would be a massive advantage for Gen.G if they can get it, but it's all going to be down to the execution here. You can see Bin trying to wrap around. He's being marked by Peanut, as Gen.G do have the push through mid and are going to have easier access into the river.
They just used the Unbreakable from Ornn's Braum, so BLG knew they had to back up for a second. You can't risk getting engaged on by the Ornn horn when that's not available to block it.
The positioning here from Gen.G is pretty good. You've got Peanut on the right flank, you've got Doran on the left, and Peanut just trying to bait out a couple of spells here, but Gen.G really trying to mitigate BLG's angles to start off these fights.
Yeah, Peanut actually got the Banshees popped off. That's what he's trying to do on Yagao, so he does pop the Banshees off Yagao, and Yagao now is a more viable target.
A little bit of poke back and forth between both sides. Doran took about 1,000 HP. It doesn't look like that because he is the Ornn. but Ornn also taking a slight amount of damage here.
But look at
being charged. Chovy's in some trouble. Uses the stasis to keep himself alive, and now the Ornn Horn's coming through. Shun looking for a little bit of pressure as Ben's Hallowed Mist is going to keep him alive. Disengage, coming back out for BLG. Gen.G take a little bit of damage, but for the amount of ultis, the amount of abilities that went flying, there's not a lot of injured health so far. Shun backing away. Elk and Ornn got to be careful as Ornn's going to take a whole lot of damage here from Peyz, rooted up, but now Peyz could be in some trouble. One more hit for the winner's bite is going to set him up. They might just take him down. Yagao's after Chovy. He's barely still alive, and Yagao's got the first kill. He kites away from Peanut to stay alive. Elk continues the chase after Doran as Peyz barely survived the onslaught from BLG, who win the fight, kill the enemy mid, and secure the next Drake.
Very scrappy fight here. A little bit of jitters, it feels like, between the teams. It looked like Shun shortchanged his Q flash there onto Chovy, and then we see Yagao shortchanging his flash as well for that pullback on his Q on Chovy. But at the end of the day, it's BLG again in these scrappier fights are going to have the advantage. It's them that come out on top. They move to Soul Point. They TP here over to the Baron, trying to make sure that Gen.G wasn't doing any sort of a sneaky rush, and they could easily start this up at this point. It is spotted, though, as they see multiple members walking over. So Doran and Peanut are here.
Nice charm down on a Doran. A little bit more damage, finding its way onto the tank, but that's not the guy you can target if the fight is even. Doran now getting chased down by Ben. He'll cut right through him. Ben is unstoppable, and BLG once again have a 5v4 as Chovy just now respawns and teleports to join up with the rest of Gen.G. BLG right back into the Baron pit. Keep your eyes on Chovy. It's going to need to be a big Tivers if they want to try to win something here. All of BLG starting to back away a little bit now. The Glacial Fissure dropped by Ornn. BLG back into the pit. Chovy tagged up the winner's bite. There's the draw, and they want to go after Chovy. They force the ulti back out into life, but BLG's health bars are looking bad. Guardian Angel's going to come out there from Shun, but Gen.G are camping the body. They take him down, and Chovy gets the credit. Peyz flashes in. He wants the damage on Ornn, but he can't quite find it. Ornn likely to drop here next as Peyz goes on a killing spree. Ben tries to fight back. Delight is down. They're going after Chovy again. Elk looks for the reset. He's trying to cut Peyz. The Rockets are ready to go. He's excited, and he just can't fight it. It's BLG winning another fight and getting another ace with a Quadra kill for Elk.
Elk gets excited and spaces Gen.G perfectly with the Rockets. No chance for Peyz to turn around. That was perfectly played by the BLG bot laner.
Wow, BLG demonstrating how strong the LPL is when it comes to team fighting. Doran sidestepping Ben. He just performed a magic trick as he disappears, walks away with the tower and daylight robbery. But let's look back at this fight.
This was so dicey. I thought BLG were going to lose this fight. Look at how low Ben is at the start of the fight. Ornn is completely out of mana. He can't even use a spell on the Braum. This was looking like they'd really overplayed their hand.
Yeah, and Shun dying at the start. There's no real way for BLG to assist him in the 4v5. Gen.G are playing patiently, and here they want to clean up. Peyz even flashes in. The shield from Ornn, magnificent to keep Ben alive. And now just keep your eyes on Ben and Elk. They're focusing getting that execution on the Ben, but that means the Elk is completely safe. The Runans means that he just tears through Gen.G, and the moment that he gets the first reset, it's crit. It's a crit, it's a crit, it's a crit, it's a crit, it's a kill, it's a Quadra for Elk.
Yeah, and that is the advantage of the Jinx in those situations. You stack the lethal tempo, and you can see it. BLG's coaching staff are pumped up after that fight. They know it was critical.
And now BLG are looking to push down bottom side. I believe that Elk is 6 items on this Jinx. He is powered up with Baron. He is protected by his team. And BLG know they got everything they need to be able to find a win. Yagao and Shun gonna pressure the mid lane, pressure the tier 3, take down the inhibitor turret as Delight goes to join back up with Doran, but the base has been broken open. Gen.G trying to group up as 5 and continue their defense.
Yeah, BLG just need to be careful if they're splitting up like that to not get engaged on. Gen.G's only real recourse in this situation is to try to get an odd number fight. They need to find a 5v4. They need to find a 4v3, something along those lines. But Ben is just going to peel them apart. You can see him pushing down here along this bot side. Ornn and Elk are just bouncing between mid and bot here, and they're going to be able to grab this inhibitor very easily. Chovy, can he find an angle?
BLG, they take out the inhib. Now Doran's gonna take the damage here with the start. Yagao CC'd as he has to try to get away. Doran goes to the Ornn, but Ornn does a beautiful job blocking it out. Tibbers is summoned, Tibbers is down. BLG, they force the inhib, they disengage. 30 seconds left on their Baron. 50 seconds until the Drake Soul spawns. Whoever gets it is getting that Ocean Soul.
BLG have done a great job of clawing control back of this game, and so much of the story was about Bin. His impact in the side lanes, the fact that he was just this unstoppable demon. And then Elk has been stepping up, level 18 on the Jinx. Full build, and now BLG feel confident as the Dragon is spawning. This feels like the deciding fight, Flowers.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to execution. Can Gen.G find the fight to turn this game back?
These fights are going to be so high lethality. There's no stopwatches available. Everyone's already kind of utilized theirs. The Zonius is even on cooldown, so it's all about the engages here. Everyone is doing so much damage at this point.
They charm up Doran, but he does a good job buffering through it. Meanwhile, the engage back onto Shun. Gen.G go after him, but they cannot burst down the jungler. BLG ready to defend him as Elk is firing into the Drake. BLG have started up the objective. Now Yagao off to the side, has to be careful. Peanut wants to contest it. Make it a 50-50 here for the Drake. He looks to go into the pit. It's going to be secured by the side of BLG. Has been Yagao look to keep everybody else occupied. Elk grabs a kill. They trade one back for support for jungler. But now Gen.G's going to go on the run. Elk is unstoppable. Gen.G are gone. A triple for the Jinx. Elk runs them over. And BLG are going to bring it home.
Pray all you want to the Church of Chovy. Nothing will stand in the way of BLG tearing Gen.G apart and going to match point in this best of 5.
It was such a close game for so long. Gen.G had an edge for so long, but the edge is blunted as BLG move on to match point.
Bin has been the difference, it feels like, for me in this series. That Gwen was unassailable in the late game fights. You see Doran was trying to mark him at the beginning of that fight. Bin didn't even commit his ulti, chunked him down 60-70% of his HP in about 2-3 seconds, cut through him like Swiss cheese. Then, as Gen.G are retreating up in that tight corridor, he finds the angle for an ulti across multiple members. The snip across multiple members instantly deletes Peyz. No one can get to Elk because Bin is such a problem. He is just not being able to be answered.
It feels like that there were just too many threats that Gen.G just couldn't solve, you know? And that final fight, it looked good initially for Peyz, getting that one kill onto the Braum. You think, oh, you get him back behind the wall, and he can just start to dish out the damage. But you saw how Bin just cut through that wall like paper, you know? There was nothing that stood in his way, and that choke point, as Azael was saying, just made it easier for Bin to do so much destruction, defying all expectations. What looked like a fantastic early game for Gen.G, they are being routed in the team fights, and BLG look fantastic.
You want to win, you got to deal with Bin.
Yep.
Gen.G has not found an answer yet. Top lane is often claimed to be some sort of an island in a game of League of Legends. Bin is an aircraft carrier, and he is unleashing the full might of the LPL on Gen.